All right, let's jump right into this explainer and demystify a system that might seem, well, incredibly distant, but actually dictates the cost of almost everything you buy. Today, we're taking a deep dive into how the US dollar, the world's reserve currency, acts as the centerpiece of a massive global money game. And listen, this isn't just Wall Street jargon. This is the invisible architecture that directly impacts your daily life, your vacation plans, and yes, even your savings account.
Here's the roadmap for our explainer today. We're going to cover the global popularity contest, the strong dollar dilemma, Wall Street's translation headache, the impact on your wallet, the Big Mac Index, and finally, the ultimate tug of war.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the global popularity contest, and how a currency's value is decided. To really wrap your head around the dollar, you first have to view its value as a math-backed popularity contest driven by the raw laws of supply and demand. Because the US uses a floating exchange rate system, the price of the dollar against, say, the euro or the yen is just constantly shifting. Now, there are three main forces that dictate this global popularity contest, but the Federal Reserve, the Fed, is undoubtedly the most powerful player on the board. Think about these numbers for a second. 5% versus 0.5%. When the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, US Treasury bonds might start offering a 5% return. Now compare that to Japanese bonds offering a mere 0.5%. For global investors, this is literally a flashing neon sign. To get those higher returns, investors have to sell their yen and buy dollars. And that massive surge in demand for the US dollar, it drives its value straight up. But hey, it's not just about interest rates. The second factor is inflation, which is basically the silent value killer. On the flip side of those high interest rates, if US inflation outpaces Europe, the dollar's purchasing power erodes faster than the euro. After all, a currency is really only as good as what it can actually buy, right? If a single dollar buys less bread today than it did yesterday, people naturally lose faith in it. And over the long term, that leads to a much weaker currency.
Factor number 3 is public debt and economic stability. Now, the US obviously carries a massive amount of debt, but as long as the world believes the US can actually pay it back, the dollar stays strong. The absolutely crucial point here is that investors are always hunting for a safe haven. During global wars or economic crashes, people rush to buy dollars because the US is viewed as the most stable house in a shaky neighborhood. In the global money game, stability equals strength.
Moving right along to Section 2, the strong dollar dilemma and the economics of winners and losers.
Let's level up a bit here and see how this builds into what we call the seesaw effect. We hear the phrase strong dollar all the time and kind of just assume it's universally good, but consider the two scenarios playing out on this seesaw. Scenario A. A strong dollar is amazing if you're an American traveling to Paris. Your $100 might effectively get you a 10% discount on your whole vacation. It also makes importing iPhone parts cheaper. But it severely hurts US exporters. Conversely, in Scenario B, a weak dollar is actually what puts American goods on sale globally, which creates jobs right here in the US Midwest. But it makes your trip to London incredibly expensive and usually raises gas prices at home.
It's fascinating to see how every single gain for a tourist or a retailer translates into a direct pain point for an exporter. If you're a US retailer, a strong dollar makes importing electronics or clothes cheap. You are a winner. But if you're trying to export US-made products to other countries, your goods just became way too pricey for foreigners to afford.
To put a very real, very expensive face to that exporter pain point, think about a $100 million American Boeing jet. If the dollar is exceptionally strong, that Boeing jet becomes significantly more expensive for a German airline to purchase when converting their euros. Because of the exchange rate alone, that airline might just decide, you know what, we'll buy an Airbus from Europe instead. A strong dollar can literally cost American companies $100 million contracts.
And that brings us perfectly to Section 3. Wall Street's translation headache, focusing on the corporate impact. Let's zoom in again right down to the large U.S. corporations that make up the S&P 500. These massive companies earn a staggering 40% of their revenue from outside the United States. And let me tell you, this creates an absolute mathematical nightmare for corporate accountants when it's time to issue those quarterly reports to their shareholders.
This leads us to a fascinating concept called translation exposure. Imagine McDonald's sells a Big Mac in London for £5. They eventually have to bring that money home and convert it back to US dollars. If the dollar is strong, that £5 might only convert to $6. But if the dollar is weak, that exact same £5 might convert to $6.50. So McDonald's could sell the exact same amount of burgers, but their U.S. earnings will magically look worse simply because a strong dollar lowers the conversion rate. Wild, right?
And this has very real consequences for anyone with a retirement account. Because of these translation losses, combined with those expensive exports we talked about with Boeing, a rapidly strengthening dollar can actually spook investors. They start realizing big tech and manufacturing companies will be reporting lower profits, which can absolutely cause the broader U.S. stock market to dip.
Moving on to Section 4, Impact on Your Wallet and the Global Supply Chain on Main Street.
Okay, let's bring this all the way home and walk through a typical American day to see exactly how these massive global forces dictate your daily spending. Step 1. Your morning coffee. The beans probably come from Brazil. If the US dollar weakens against the Brazilian real, Starbucks import costs go up and bam, they hike your latte price by 25 cents to cover it. Step 2. The family car. If the yen is weak and the dollar is strong, Toyota can actually lower their US prices to steal market share from Ford, which means you could get a cheaper car. Then we hit step 3, which is kind of the silver lining of a strong dollar. If the dollar is strong because the Federal Reserve has hiked interest rates, those high-yield savings accounts you keep hearing about might finally be paying you 4 or 5% interest on your cash. It's one of the few direct, obvious consumer benefits of the policies that strengthen our currency.
Section 5. The Big Mac Index and Purchasing Power Parity.
So, with all this wild fluctuation, how do economists actually know if the dollar's value is fair? Well, they use a fantastic, highly relatable mathematical anchor called the Big Mac Index, which is based on the law of one price. By comparing the price of a $6 Big Mac in New York to a 5-pound Big Mac in London, economists strip away all the intimidation of global finance. You literally just divide the US price by the UK price to reveal the implied exchange rate. If the actual Wall Street exchange rate is wildly different from this burger-based math, it tells economists that a currency is likely overvalued or undervalued.
Which brings us to our final section, the ultimate tug-of-war and our final analysis.
Wrapping this explainer up, it's pretty clear that changes in foreign currency are a constant double-edged sword for the United States. A strong dollar keeps our inflation in check and makes us feel rich when we travel abroad, but it can completely hollow out our domestic manufacturing. Ultimately, deciding the dollar's value is a delicate, ongoing tug-of-war between three massive forces: the Federal Reserve's interest rates, the government's budget balance and debt, and the global appetite for American goods. These shifts literally dictate the difference between profit and loss for everyone.
Which leaves me with a final thought to toss your way. Whether you are a consumer buying a laptop or a business owner selling software overseas, you are a player in this game. Based on all the mechanics we've unpacked today, I want you to ask yourself, how does the current strength of the dollar actually impact your specific business model or your investment strategy? Are you currently sitting on the winning or the losing side of the seesaw?